Welcome to the Total Welfare App tutorial, the new client management software for dog pros that allows you to assess and track welfare over time for your client. The Total Welfare model provides a practical framework for dog professionals to apply modern animal welfare science for the benefit of captive pet dogs. That's right. Modern pet dogs are in fact captive animals, and we do need to be applying animal welfare science and principles for their benefit. Using the same kinds of frameworks that modern animal welfare scientists apply for animals living in zoos, on farms, and laboratories, etc., dog pros can apply these 3 steps for the benefit of the dogs in their care. First, they can identify the legs of the individual dog that they're working with. In other words, the components of their phenotype, their learning, environment, genetics, and self. And they can enter this information and manage their canine profiles in the app itself. Secondly, they can follow the 5 domains of animal welfare to make sure that the provisions delivered for a given animal in their care are in fact covered comprehensively across the 5 domains of nutrition, physical environment, health and fitness, and behavioral interactions, all contributing to the dog's mental state and total welfare. And then thirdly, they can track that welfare state using behavioral diversity, which is a very exciting new measure that helps us to ensure that an animal is living up to their best selves and enjoying the good life standard of welfare in the lives they're living in captivity. Welcome to Total Welfare. While other client management software programs are available for dog professionals, this is the first application of its kind to promote a healthy cycle in the 21st century of pet dog keeping, teaching both dog professionals and their clients how to be optimal keepers of their canine companions in captive conditions by promoting natural living and the kind of behavioral diversity that indicates that a pet dog is truly thriving in our care. There are 52 behaviors in the Total Welfare Ethogram that you will be tracking and comparing through behavioral diversity surveys and reports that you can share with clients and veterinarians alike. So let's get started with your tutorial.
I'm going to do a quick walkthrough for you with the Total Welfare app so that you know how to use it, how to make sure you know how to run reports, enter client data, all of those things, and show you all of the things that you can do within the app. So when you log into the app, it's going to come up and it's going to come to your dashboard, which is, I'm doing it on my computer because it'll be easier to see, but you'll also, it'll look the same when you're on your phone. So when you come to your dashboard, what it's going to have the most recently added client information. So whoever you added the most recently, that's who's going to pop up here on your dashboard. The other thing you'll be able to see is that you'll have the total number of clients up here, the total number of pets divided amongst those clients. So for example, Trisha Kelly has 1 dog, and then if you look under Andy, she has 2. So it's just the number of pets that are listed in your account. And then you'll also have the number of reports that you have run to date. So this will be we'll go over what those reports look like and how to run them, but that will show just the total number of reports. And again, this is just your dashboard. We'll talk about and show you what it looks like when you go into each client. So from here, you're able to manage your subscription here, and upgrade your plan depending on if you're, what you're doing, cancel your subscription, show what you've purchased. And then in your own profile, you can change your password, you can add your picture, edit any of your information, such as your phone number or your email address, or you can delete your account altogether. And so that is over here in this section. We're up here with the 4 little dots. And then the little bell up here is just going to be your notifications. So it's going to show, any of the recent notifications, such as, when you've created your account, added a card, had your subscription update, anything like that will go in the notification section. So when you're on this page, the other things down here we'll go over. So your clients, this is going to be all of the clients that you have listed in your account. So those are all listed under here. You're also able to search in here by your client name. So if I was looking for Judy Remo, I could look for JU and it would pull up Judy Remo, or I could look for RE and it would pull up Judy Remo. And so you can search for your clients that way. You can only search by name as of right now. You can't search by their email address, but you can search by first name or last name. We'll jump over here into the survey section next. And so this is going to show you, and we'll get into what like this, how to run a report. This will just pull you up to the surveys that you have run. And so this shows you that it'll have the dog's name next to it, and then the date and time that it was run. You can rename these reports. So if I wanted to rename this to be B. Cantrell, June survey. I could rename it, and then that's what it will show up as, from there. Most of the surveys you'll most likely be running are behavioral surveys. And again, we're going to go over what the differences are in those. But it'll also show if you run any biological surveys. Those will also be here. If you want to search by a date that you ran a report, so let's say for all of your clients, you run reports for them on the 15th of every month. You could, we'll say the 13th because that's when I ran them all today. So I could choose the 13th and it would show me all of those. And let's say I wanted to see what I ran on the 12th, and I select that date there. And then when I hit OK, it's going to show nothing because I didn't run any reports on July 12th. So it's automatically going to show you the most recent. So today, yesterday, those kind of things first. But you can also search by the client. So if I wanted to search for Millie, it's going to pull that up. If I wanted to search for Bud, it'll pull that up. Once you've run a lot of reports and as you're using this as a client management software, you're going to obviously have lots of reports that are held here. So this is an easy way to pull up for each person. And I'm also going to show you, like I said, we're going to go into a client so you'll be able to see where that looks like within the client. So if I go into, for example, my client, and I'm going to go to Dan Larkin, it'll pull up his account, and I'm going to walk you through how to create an account here in a minute as well. So it'll have his contact information, so his phone number and his email address. And then if you would like to grant him access, you would just click this button and it'll prompt you to send an email here, and you'll be able to send an email directly to this client. Client access, they do not get access to all of your notes. They do have the ability to run surveys and view their dog surveys, but you still have the control of the app. Also, your clients do not have to pay for the app. So you can have an unlimited number of clients with an unlimited number of dogs under your account. It is free for your client because they have limited permissions. So under Dan, he has a dog named Bud. And so if I wanted to see Bud's information, I could click on his picture and it's going to give me everything that I have entered for this dog so far. So when you come into, Dan Larkin and you click on his dog Bud, when you open the picture, I've imported a picture of Bud. And then when you open learning, it's going to talk about what learning is. So right here, it talks about what this section, is about. And then it also has, anything I've entered in. So, the habit or behavior or struggle. He likes to run and chase rabbits. I didn't need to put anything in for associations. It didn't apply in this situation. The skills, he has a basic recall, and then the learning or problem or goals, the owner would like, a solid recall even with wildlife. So you can do that for each individual section, and, put as much or as little as you want, in these sections. You might have a ton of information about, this dog's environments that he's lived in. Maybe it's a dog that's been moved around a lot or been in the shelter for a long time or moved to a lot of foster homes, or maybe he's been in the same home for his entire life. You'll be able to put all of that information into this profile. On the genetic side, same thing. You'll be able to put in all of the important genetic things. If you know it, there is a section you can actually upload the dog's, embark profile, or that shows the exact genetic makeup. And it'll also, you'll have the, top 3 breed types here as well. And then under the S, you will also be able to put, the basic information about the dog. So their age, their spayed or neutered, their current diet information, any disabilities that they may have, their personality. You'll also be able to store information about their nutrition. And so, I made a note under here when I created this profile that the dog is eating kibble twice a day and then getting a variety of whole foods like sweet potatoes and green beans to add it at dinner. And you can do this for each of the domains here. So for the physical environment, for the health and fitness, for the behavior, for the mental state. I didn't have anything to add on there, so it just says notes. And then under this dog, so we're in Bud's profile, you can see that I ran a behavior survey here under Bud. And so if I wanted to rename that, I could. If I wanted to view it, I just click on it. And it's not going to be very good because I just was doing it, really fast so that you could see kind of what it looks like. But it will show you a breakdown of what the pie chart looks like for this dog based on the score. It'll show you a key and it'll tell you what each percentage is. The other cool thing is it's going to show you any behavior that was rated at a 0, which means the dog is never doing it. And ideally, in a perfect world, we have no behaviors under here. Because I was rushing, there are a lot under here. But each behavior has its own color, so it makes it super obvious when you are looking at the pie chart, what is what. You can also kind of scroll over and it'll tell you what each behavior is with your mouse or your finger if you're on the mobile version. Let me make this smaller so it'll be easier to see. It'll also give you your Shannon's index by behavioral diversity score here. So you don't have to do any math. The app does all the math for you. If you want more information about this score, you can give this. This is a great thing to share with clients when they ask if their score is good or bad. This is a really good thing to show them. And then you can also share the report with your client. So if I wanted to share this, with Dan, who is Bud's owner, I could hit share and I could share it via mail, via text, depending on what is the best option. And then just make sure that your client understands what the results mean. So that's where the education definitely comes in, of knowing what the behaviors are, why they're important, all of those things. You can also compare reports. So if I had multiple reports in for Bud, I could compare them. Since I only have the one, there's nothing to compare it to. You can also create notes under each dog within each client. So I made some notes here that, it was a vet visit and the dog had a vet visit on May 3rd to refill her allergy meds because their feet were itchy. It'll date that. You can also add any pictures or files that you want to attach to that note. So that's something you can upload into here. You can also type and edit a note. So let's say that I wanted to edit this, owner switched meds from Zyrtec to Claritin to whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then hit update. And it's going to update that vet visit note with all of the, information. And then if I felt like that wasn't important, I could take that out and update again. and it'll say note updated. You can also use this, if you talk with the owner. So the owner had to cancel their appointment because they had an emergency dentist appointment. So you can edit edit any sort of note you create here is not something that the client can see. It's just stuff for your record. So this is an easy way to track cancellations, any important notes, if you're using this amongst other people, in a group, that's all stored under here. So there's lots of little I buttons that you'll see in this app that have more information in case you have, an immediate question. So this will give you, an information about the L.E.G.S profile, and what that means. So we'll take a look at Andy, and we're going to take a look at B. I want to show you something in her reports. So this is kind of what a good variety is going to look like. So if you have a dog who has a lot of behaviors that they're doing, I'm going to give you this really pretty chart that gives you ideally tons of different slices with lots of rainbows and colors. And it will still show you if there were any behaviors that were not, marked at all, meaning this dog is never doing these behaviors. So that's definitely something, the score you can see is a lot higher than Bud's score. Because he had only been doing, according to that report, like 5 behaviors. So you're comparing the dog against themselves. And so you're seeing if you can optimize the score and make sure the dog is, improving, not necessarily comparing them to another dog. So let's go back to our main page. And so I'm going to show you how to add in a client and add in dogs. So to add in a client, you're going to go down here to the plus sign, and it's going to bring you to the client information spot. So this is where you're going to put in the client information. So we're going to put Joe Smith, and he lives at, and you can put the address. You don't have to, this is not a requirement, but if you're using this to, track your clients and make it easier, you can put in their actual address. So we'll put in my address, and you can select it and it'll save that, and that way you can easily get to them when you're driving, pull up their address. You're going to enter their email address. And then you're going to enter their phone number. And if they're in a different country, you can select the different country, and it'll adjust the country code automatically. Then you're going to, if you have your picture, if you want to add a picture, you can. You don't have to. And then hit save. And now it's going to prompt you to build the dog. So obviously, you can put more than one dog under a person, but we'll start with the first dog. So I'll name the first dog Fido. And if you have a picture of Fido, you could enter, the picture here. You do not have to. So let's say that this is the first session with this client and we don't have a ton of information. You can skip all of these things if you would like. So you can go back and enter these things after you get back home, after the appointment. These are things that you could potentially fill out, some of them beforehand, before going, but even if you leave it blank, it'll let you continue on. So again, and it'll tell you kind of which stage you're in, L.E.G.S, so the learning, environment, genetics, and self. So it'll kind of let you know which page you're on, and you can leave this blank or enter all the information. Here is where you could enter, upload a picture of the dog's actual genetic sheet from NBARC or whatever other DNA tests that they're using. You could select, again, this can all wait until later. You don't have to enter this to continue, but you could select the, the breed type that the dog is, and then enter the breed. So let's say that this dog is a herding dog and it's a border collie. And then if I didn't know any of these ones, maybe it's just a border collie and it's not mixed, I can leave those blank. And again, if I go back into that and I take those things out, it will still let me move on. You do not have to fill them out ahead of time. Same thing with this. You can enter the information that you know, leave the things out you don't know, leave it blank until later. And then it's going to bring you the ability to create a note. So maybe you want to just take quick notes about that session, enter blah, 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 hit continue. Nope, sorry, add a title. So I might make first session and I know client notes, blah, 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 blah. Any pictures that maybe you want to update, add in medical records, anything like that, you could end up there. Picture of the dog, whatever makes the most sense for you. And I'm going to hit continue. And again, going back, if I, I wanted to go back into Joe. I could, if I wanted to, leave all of this blank. If I didn't want to add a note in and I just wanted to leave it blank, you don't have to enter it to continue forward. So it will still populate all of the things.
Okay, so we are going to run a behavioral diversity report, and we're going to show you how to do that here. So we're going to click on this client myself here, Kim Brophey. This is Early, my dog, and then Tybee, my daughter's dog. I'm going to go ahead and click on Tybee here so that you can see how we could run a new report. You will see their L.E.G.S profile pop up, and their 5 domains when you click on the dog's image, their profile there, and you can just keep those collapsed and go right to make a new report. This is something that you can run as often as you like. The scoring is meant to be optimized for accuracy based on a 30-day period, but that means that you will get the most accurate information when you're thinking about it over the course of a 30-day period, but you can actually run them whenever you'd like to. So if you wanted to run one just based on an hour you were spending with a dog and a wonderful walk that you had and all these behaviors you saw, you could totally do that. You're just really scoring what you're seeing, that you've seen that at least once that day, right? And maybe you could make a note to yourself in that account just to indicate that that was a 1 hour event that you had with that dog and you used that accordingly in that fashion during that period of time, just so that when you go back and you look at that report later, you'll remember, okay, that was a report that I was just running while I was with that dog for that hour. I wanted to see what behaviors I saw. But again, you're really going to get the most accurate read in terms of the frequency of the expression of these behaviors as they relate to each other in behavioral diversity when you're running them over the 30 days. So there's 2 main values for you to be thinking about. One is going to be the richness, which is how many behaviors are expressed. And then 2 is evenness, which is how evenly they are expressed compared to each other. So that's why it's important that we actually have those values for accuracy of welfare assessment for those 30-day periods. But for your own data collection, again, you can run them as often as you'd like. So when you come to this page, you're going to have to select between behavioral survey and biological survey. The biological survey is going to be something that covers behaviors like urination, defecation, eating, drinking, sleeping, etc. Really important things for us to be tracking as far as welfare is concerned, but they aren't part of behavioral diversity calculations. And there's a couple of reasons for that based on the criteria for inclusion of the behaviors in the ethogram, and you can learn more about that on our website. But right now we're going to click the behavioral survey. This first page you come to is going to explain how the scoring works based on that 30-day period that I just described. And so 0 would be that you never observe the behavior is never seen in the dog, at least to someone's knowledge. 1 is rarely, which is less than every few months. 2 is occasionally, which is observed at least once a month. 3 is regularly observed, which is at least once a week. 4, frequently observed, at least once a day. And 5, excessively observed, daily and repeatedly, compulsively, or for long periods of time. And so that then each of those scores is based on a mathematical calculation compared or related to that 30-day period. So you will also see here that there are downloadable practice sheets that you can click to download, share with your clients, have your clients print them out. You can print them out. You can keep them with you, carry them around. Those are kind of handy for when you just are seeing behaviors on the fly and you want to make a little tick mark next to the behavior. So please just know that that's a wonderful available resource. And if you don't want to be running these behavioral surveys when you're out working with a dog, you just want to have a place where you can document things as you're seeing them, that's what those practice sheets are for. So we are going to begin the behavioral survey of these 52 behaviors. So you'll notice at the top of the screen here, there's a little eye next to behavioral survey. If you click on that, it will show you the key that we were just looking at a moment ago. So just in case you forget what the particular numbers here refer to in terms of their relevance to a 30-day period, you can look at that key at any time. So as you go through the 52 behaviors here, you will notice that there are video examples of each of the behaviors so that you can see what they actually look like in a real dog. So for this one is tracking scent air, for example. And that will just definitely help people, you and your clients, to make sure that you know what you're looking for. It's also really important that you are reading the descriptions closely. You have these images here as well that can help to depict what the behaviors look like for yourselves and your clients. But the descriptions are really important. So rather than just kind of going off the title of the behavior, the name of the behavior, and whatever that might mean to you just from associations you've garnered in your life, as well as your clients, just encourage yourself and others to really read those descriptions, because if the dog's behavior does not meet the criteria in the description, then it doesn't count. So that's just important to think about. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to complete this, and then I will show you guys the results here in just a moment. Okay, so we've just completed the survey and selected the last of the behaviors, and you can see Tybie's behavioral diversity results here on the page. So just at first glance, you'll see that there are a lot of different behaviors represented, which is good. They are of relatively even proportion, with just a couple of exceptions. We have a few things that are rated a 1, and we'll talk about those here in a second. I don't think anything was rated as a 5. And so it's interesting, if you look at the ones that are rated 0.68 here, those are the things that just got the 1. I just want to point out some things that you might want to consider from this particular data set. So looking at, for instance, some of the patterns with what got the score of 1, which is rarely observed. Play, restrained biting, testing, scent rolling, play, rollover, solicitation, caching, play, mouth sparring, investigating, regenerating, being outdoors. So it's interesting because recently there's been a change in my daughter's environment where the other dog who is her playmate in the household hasn't been willing to play with her. Could be because she's hit sexual maturity and is just an annoying teenager at the moment. Or it could be that there's other things that are going on for that dog and his particular welfare that are influencing whether or not he is interested in playing with her right now. So either way, those behavioral opportunities have been greatly reduced lately. So you'll notice the pattern of play, restrained biting, play, rollover solicitation, play, mouth sparring. Those have all been reduced lately. She lives in an apartment, so the regenerating being outdoors as a behavior is one that is hard for her to access because she's such a excitable little dog. She has to be outside for a long period of time in a similar kind of set of conditions in order to calm down enough to really just fully relax and just be outside, and to be able to access that experience. She's so high arousal. So that is challenged by her particular environment, as is a behavior like investigating. So if she hears or smells or sees something outside, her ability to get closer to it to gather more information is compromised. Some of these things might also be kind of related to age. So the marking, urination, defecation, marking, kicking ground, mounting and humping, splitting, mediating, those are all specific to developmental components. So thinking about how that kind of marking or mounting, those behaviors may sometimes not emerge in a dog's development until they hit sexual maturity. So that's why it's so important that we are always using that process we talked about at the beginning of the video of referencing the dog's legs. So if I go back to her S factors, then some of those things are going to make self for those internal conditions of her age developmentally, why she wouldn't be doing that. Same thing with splitting and mediating, not really a behavior that you're necessarily going to see a lot of in a dog that hasn't fully matured, although you could, but that is something that is going to be more commonly observed in older dogs or mature dogs than, say, puppies. So that's something I'd fully expect. So something else to think about that would just be interesting for this particular case, Tybee being a herding dog, something like the splitting and mediating, which is kind of managing social interactions behavior, would be something that I would expect to see emerge and no longer be rated 0 as she does hit sexual and social maturity. And some of these other behaviors we might also anticipate increasing some in terms of things like stalking, chasing, things like that. So just something to anticipate in terms of herding dog and part of her phenotype for being a herding dog mix, that we might expect some of those behaviors to increase as she matures as well, and those legs shift over time. So if we're looking at her Shannon's index for behavioral diversity, we've got a score of 3.77 here. If you want to get more information about that, you can click on the eye and get a little bit for a further explanation, and that's something you can also share with clients. You can look up the formula online if you're really interested in the math and how all that works. So we can also compare reports here, something to think about. You can look at this and say, I want to see how does this compare to other reports that I have run for Tybee previously. So maybe I want to compare it to one that I ran on the 16th and see whether or not that has changed. So this report, I think, was probably one I was doing just for the sake of having something to compare to. So this is not actually Tybee's behavioral diversity on July 16th. July 16th. But you can see that there's less pieces of pie, they're taking up much more space in her activity budget for behavioral diversity. Her score is lower. She had many more behaviors that were rated 0. So if this were a real comparison between those two reports over a period of time, we would be able to see visually and with the actual data of the Shannon's index calculation that this dog's behavioral diversity and welfare has improved since the last report. So that's something really neat. You will also notice here that you have the option to share the report. So if you click on the little share icon at the top right of the screen, then you will be able to share the report with your clients, veterinarians, etc. So we can share here via email, or we have an option to share in these other fashions if we want to use a different application. So that's really helpful as well. So making sure everyone is on the same page together. So hopefully that is a good summary for you in terms of understanding how to run a behavioral diversity report and interpret some of the data referencing back to the legs of the dog. Furthermore, you can also consider how these behaviors might indicate what's happening for a dog in the 5 domains as well. So just something else to think about in terms of referencing back to step 2. We might look at these and say, we really want to increase behavioral opportunities in some of these capacities where we feel like, for instance, exploring, we'd like that to be higher. We want the dog to be maybe increasing some of their social behaviors with other dogs. Maybe that's at a deficit. So we're looking at the behavioral interactions with dogs and realizing that might be lower than we would like, want to kind of build that up a little bit. We also could be looking for patterns here that might indicate problems in, say, nutrition or health and fitness. So if a dog was not exhibiting behaviors that were really active and only exhibiting the behaviors that they were able to do when they're more stationary, that could indicate that there was some kind of a discomfort issue, a pain problem, some type of a medical issue. One of our students recently ran a report with her own dog, for instance, and found that there was a pattern of her dog not doing the behaviors that required holding things in her mouth. So holding, biting, shaking, biting, grabbing, biting, carrying, biting, parading, biting. Those were all behaviors that she wasn't seeing represented in her dog. And so she decided to look into that further. She worked at a vet hospital and found that the dog actually had dental issues and had 2 dead teeth that needed to be removed and was experiencing pain. So it's possible that that data that you're getting can then, when you're referencing back to the legs of the dog or the 5 domains provisions, provide some interesting things for you to consider and provide some breadcrumb evidence of places you might want to look in order to find some opportunities to improve welfare. So if we go back here, we will also find the option that we have to run a biological survey. So far we have not run but one biological survey for TIB so far. And when you go through and you run a biological survey, I just want to show you guys something really quick here. When you go through and you run a biological survey, you will notice that the keys are different for each of the behaviors. You were asked to reference a 7-day period for this because if you were seeing marked changes in urination, defecation, eating, drinking, etc., those could be really pertinent to potential serious health concerns. So you can click on the eye next to each of these behaviors and it will give you the particular scoring for each of them. So grooming, for instance, let's say I'm doing this for TIB. I want to say maybe she's doing that excessively right now, and she's doing a lot of scratching excessively and a lot of shaking off after she's scratching excessively. She's doing a lot of seeking of laying in cold areas. Her eating is normal. Her drinking is also excessive. Her sleeping is poor because of all this scratching and grooming. Urination's normal. Defecation's normal. Eating grass and soil, she's doing a little bit of. And so I go to look at this report and I see, wow, okay, so this dog is kind of excessively doing some behaviors like the grooming, scratching, temperature regulation, seeking cold areas, drinking a lot of water. Maybe the dog is uncomfortable and having some kinds of skin issues that I want to look into, right? Hopefully those would be things that would be apparent, but maybe we have a long-haired dog and that's something that's not on our radar otherwise. And so the behavior kind of can indicate for us that maybe that dog is having some issue we want to take a look at. So we also can compare reports between those as well. So if we wanted to look at the one that I ran previously, then I could do that and say, okay, so we've got a previous report here of a biological survey that was run yesterday, and we can compare those metrics and see the difference between them and changes over time. We can also share those as well. That same share icon is at the top right of your screen. So hopefully that helps you guys appreciate some of the benefits and insights that running behavioral and biological surveys can provide, particularly the behavioral diversity surveys, as they can give incredible insight into what is going on for a dog across their 5 domains and point to trouble spots, opportunities, and obstacles that we have in improving that dog's standard of living.